live learning session. Philippine Professional Standard for Teachers Diversity of Learners webinar series. For the discussion today, the topic will be on learners from Indigenous groups. Before we begin, take note of the following reminders. Make sure you are registered to the webinar to have your e-certificate of participation. Visit certificate.vibalgroup.com to generate your proof of attendance. Place your questions on the comment box allotted during the session and they will be addressed by our speaker later on. Share the video using hashtag LearnAs1PH as our official hashtag to our Vibal webinars. Experience learning, ka-Vibal? And now, to proceed with our webinar this afternoon, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our distinguished speaker today. He is a consultant and evaluator for K-12 Philippine Basic Education, the curriculum and academic consultant of Sisters of Mary. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Brother Roderick M. Aguirre.
Hi, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So welcome again for our afternoon of learning on focusing more on the PPST, that's Philippine Professional Standards for Teachers. I'll try to slow down and calm down a little. And I'm quite excited with the topic for this afternoon because this is the kind of topic that is not usually talked about in a regular basis in education. And what's so amazing about this opportunity for us to talk about is that we get to know some of those information that we need to do something about, especially we're in the education field. And one way or the other, after this 1 hour session with this webinar, I think you would realize that how much effort have I done to really promote and protect the indigenous peoples in the Philippines. And to this afternoon, we will try to realize and understand what exactly are the roles and the importance of having IPs or indigenous peoples in the Philippines. I'm kind of hearing, is that a sound somewhere? All right, so I'll just have to continue perhaps. Um, I think, un momento, por favor. I'm just gonna share my PowerPoint presentation with you before anything else happens. There we go. Okay, so this is the Strand 5 of PPST Domain 3, and I would like to share I don't have extensive experience about dealing with the indigenous people, but my meager experience in conducting lexicography and looking at the indigent vocabulary, some of the people in VIBAL. The latest study that I did was on the indigent vocabulary of the Karamoan people, and I was trying to look at at least 50 years of the language evolution of the language of Karamoan, and I found out that each island that the different islands of Karamoan have different different vocabulary and to share to the person like myself, and it was really difficult to talk to them because there were words that somehow similar to the Bicol language, but it meant something else to the people in the island. And then what's so surprising about this experience that I had with the Carmoan Islands and the current island people is that they're happy with their situation, but they don't realize that they're considered to be part of the poorest of the poor category of population in the Philippines. If not the Philippines, at least if not the whole world, but at least in the Philippines, they're categorized in the margin of the poorest of the poor. But in their perspective, they feel like they are just thriving the way they should because they don't have, well, probably have contacts with the main island people. It's just that they don't see the need for electricity, they don't need for education, they don't need for other things that people like us in the cities would see as a basic, but for them it's not. And I realized in a way I get to realize and do some reflection of the kind of life that I was living, because we stayed there until 6 p.m. Well, actually 5 p.m. and almost like it's kind of dark already, and I felt like it's already evening, but it was getting dark. But nonetheless, I the last question I asked the family that I was interviewing in Carmoan, one of the islands of Carmoan, is that I said, "What do you usually do in the evenings?" And since you don't have electricity, I said, "Oh, we enjoy the evenings because after having dinner and actually salita nila ay meron akong kasi translator nandoon na hindi ko kasi masyadong kabisado ang language ng mga islands, yung pure kasi na Bicol lang gamit nila doon sa islands of the Carmoan, and my kind of Bicol is more of Naga Bicol, and I wasn't really understanding. So I had an informant and a translator with me. There were two people, one from the island, and one from Karamoan, who was a professional working for the Ayala Foundations. And they were the ones who gave me the opportunity to hop from one island to another, and given the opportunity to be immersed with the cultures of the different people of Karamoan and different islands. And it's really, really interesting and beautiful to see. And the last question I asked this family, this informant that I had with, the last informant that I had in my 1 week stay there in Karamoan, the question that I asked is that, what do you usually do in the evening? Because in the evening, in the cities, we would, watch Netflix, probably do browse the internet, like go and look for TikTok and all, or probably like myself would do a lot of PowerPoint presentation and do online research. But I was really amazed at the answer of the father. And he said that um, we enjoy the evenings actually. And he said in the language, okay, as translated to me by my informant, in the evenings, what I do is after dinner, meron silang toko-toka. So the panganay would be the ones to, the panganay talagang English ka na. Yung panganay, siya yung maghuhugas ng pinggan, ang bunso ang magpupuna. So they have tasks, and it was taught to them by the mother and passed on. Sabi ko, sino nagturo na dapat may mga tasks na ganun? Pinalaki sila ng kanilang mga magulang na gano'n, tapos it was passed on and so on and so forth. Tapos ang paglilinis nila, ginagamitan ng bunot. They don't need for detergent at all because they were just near the ocean, the beach. We could call it beach, not necessarily the ocean per se, kasi may mga islands pa. So they would get sand and all. And I said, wow, it was really malinis naman kasi nung ginanon ko talagang wala ng sebo, diba? Fish lang naman ang kinain namin. Fish lang talaga, sorry. It was delicious kasi nga straight from the water, tapos diretso nilang ginigrill. Anyway, and then I said that after dinner and everything, all the tasks have been done. What they do is they go to the beach in the sand. They lie down in the sand and stare up the sky and look at the stars. And the father and the mother would tell their kids the story that their parents told them about, the stories about the stars, the origin of the islands, what are the names of the islands. So these were information and traditions that have been passed on from one generation of those people living in the island down to the current generation. And then I realized I was given the opportunity because I was doing transcription of the different literatures in the different islands, listening to their stories of the origins and legends. And I said, if we could only put this part, all of this information to the education in the curriculum in the Philippines, and especially in the MTBMLE curriculum, we could probably educate the people about the IPs. And in like manner, we would also promote the cultures of these people, the IPs who are, I would believe these are the regional people who have been untouched by colonization and touched by, you know, changes in civilizations. And I believe that we need to protect this kind of people. Title pa lang, ang dami ko nung sabi. I'm just so happy that I've given the opportunity. I hope that after the pandemic, I could go back because I haven't finished tasks there of documenting. I haven't gone towards documenting their music, their traditions, their fiestas and all. Nasa language pa lang ako noon. So and literature, calling their literature. So I hope I could go back to Karamoan after the pandemic. I want to stay there. I have, established a lot of friends there, and they considered me as one of the members of the community. They called me as an adopted son of Karamoan. So I'm happy for that too. Anyway, so this is what we would like for our teachers and our students alike to propagate in the Philippines. Well, the idea of indigenous groups, learners from the indigenous groups, is that they are not supposed to be stigmatized, stereotypes as lesser people or lesser Filipinos or lesser kind of learners. They are still people, only that we need to consider where they come from. Well, this is one of the many principles of teaching, that we need to understand who our learners are and try to profile where they come from, so that when we come up with examples and relevant applications of the things that we teach them through the lessons, is that they are able to see and apply those knowledge in their immediate, daily activities in the communities where they come from. And probably we're not able to address some of the specific needs of our students, especially those students who come from indigenous groups, on the reason that we may not have thoroughly profiled of our students. I do understand with the onset of the pandemic, we are so caught up with finishing our modules, doing LAC sessions and all, but we may not realize that some of our students there are really coming from indigenous groups in the Philippines, and we may not be able to consider that, because there's a possibility that if you don't consider their culture and their traditions and their language, eventually these students will be taught, will be educated, but the possibility of that person or that student graduating and forgetting his culture and believing that there's a better culture. We don't want our students to graduate from our basic education, from Philippine education system, understanding or knowing that or believing that there's what we call as a super culture and a subordinate culture or a subculture. Well, we want our students to believe that all cultures in the world, be it coming from the Philippines, are all equal in its stance, and that it has to be respective. And this is why domain number three is all about diversity of learners. And when we say diversity of learners, is that we have to respect the differences of our students and use it to our utmost advantage. All right. Dami ko nung sinabi, title pa lang po. I'm really hooked up with this idea of, given a chance to share ideas, how we can promote and protect the indigenous peoples of the Philippines, and how we can protect them. All right, I'm an advocate of that. Every time I go to Bicol, every time I go to any place in the Philippines, and the first thing I would look for are the products, okay, the products of the indigenous people. Like if I go to Benguet, maghahanap ako ng mga weave, mga hinabi nila mga tela, mga baskets, because it's one way of also supporting their livelihood. And once we support their livelihood, they continue their traditions of making these products. And okay, let me stop. Let's just go through what I have prepared for you guys. I'm now telling you of my experience of going around the Philippines. I think the only place I haven't been to the Philippines is the Batanes. Sana po meron po dyan na mag-invite po sa akin. Nalibot ko na ang pababa ng Pilipinas, but I have the last island that I have not been to is nakapunta na ako ng Hulos, nakapunta na ako ng Sulo, pinakadulo-dulo sa baba, but haven't been in Batanes. So Batanes there. Okay. I've been to Kalinga, to the upper parts po. Very, very nice kind of experience of, the culture. So our idea here, my trivia that I would like to share with you about this topic about learners coming from indigenous groups the idea of protection and preservation of indigenous peoples. What we want with education is not to educate our students to become, to become educated, to become knowledgeable, to become skilled, but they should not shed away their original and their identity as where they come from. They should still preserve who they are, where they come from, and be proud of where they come from, and not feel that there are lesser people, lesser population in the Philippines. Hence, they would try to pretend that they do not come from that particular indigenous group. May mga ako na kilala, sorry for the iPod, may classmates ako dati sa grad school. Well, college muna po, tapos nagkaroon ako sa grad school sa PNU, and some of my classmates then in the grad school were coming from the mountain provinces. Every Saturday lang yun. Dalawa po yata sila, tatlo. And then, I don't know, but there's what we call as similarity of features of people coming from a certain type of IP. So I asked the person, yung classmate ko na, what province do you come from in the Philippines? Because you look someone coming from the north. At that time, I was so insensitive about stereotypes. So very sensitive. I was a fresh graduate, went directly to grad school, and my mouth was was still uneducated, I would ask, questions. What's inside my mind, I would definitely ask immediately, without, using euphemisms and, trying to sanitize my language, my questions, to make, the person feel not uh, demeaned. Anyway, so I asked the person, so what province do you come from? I believe because your features look like you are coming from the north part of the Philippines. Are you Igorot? And then I think I made my classmate and felt so, stereotyped and classified. Hindi niya ako sinugot, pumunta lang siya sa sulok. Sama ang ugali ko nun talaga kasi I felt I was better than the other people. Mas magaling, talino. That was the old kind of Ricky before. And I was always the one answering questions, and I was condescending to some of my classmates who are coming from, like, may mga classmates ako na from Iloilo, may mga madra akong classmates from Iloilo, and then may mga accents sila na, oh, your accent's so funny, you speak in English and yet you have this Ilonggo accent. Oh gosh, now, like, talking about my topic right now, make me recall all the bad things I have done in the past to people who are coming from different cultures in the Philippines. But I'm saying now I'm a better person, and have, because of my exposure to the different cultures in the Philippines, I get to realize how to adjust those people, and we need to respect them. And I thank VIBAL for allowing me, giving me this chance to talk about this topic. All right, so this is what the idea I would like to put across to people. All right, it's not about talking about these people. It's not about putting them on the media. It's not about making our students know about these people. It's about respecting them who they are. We don't have to do like all the way go to the media, raise our hands. The idea there is we try to be respectful of their traditions and not compare ours to theirs, or vice versa. We could probably go there and be part of their culture once in a while, and not say based on tourism and promote them as a tourist spot. Isn't that condescending, and using them as a commercializing the Philippines? I would say is to because we would like to know them better. This is what I want us to do. How can we protect our students who are coming from the IP group, if we don't know them? So it's not protecting and preserving per se, but it's trying to know them and understanding who they are and where they come from. And from there, we could probably come up with a better way, a higher form of addressing their needs and helping them become better, but never forgetting who they are, and where they come from. So our trivia today is, of course, I got this from United Nations, UNESCO, and Commission of Historical Commission on there's a commission in France. I've just forgotten, and my head is somewhere else right now. I'm still recalling all the experience that I had with the people in Caramoa, the people in Catanduanes. I've been with the people in people Masbate. I've been from the different islands in Masbate for moving there. Anyway, recalling all of those. I could have probably put them my pictures here. Anyway, I don't want to promote the different IDs without their consent. Oh, trivia. It is a fact that the indigenous peoples are culturally distinct societies and communities. Although they make up 6% of the global population, they account for about 15% of the extreme poor. Mind you, we recognize that there are a lot of IPs, indigenous people, indigenous groups in the Philippines, but we have to realize that they are the remnants. They are the composite picture of the real Philippines, of the real Filipinos before the colonization happened. The Spaniards, the Americans, the Japanese, and somehow they have retained their identity, their cultural identities, their traditions, their language, and other people outside their cultures have moved on, have been colonized, like I've been colonized thoroughly, and I'm probably a composite picture of a colonized Filipino. But we need to protect these people, not protecting in a sense that we have to uh, put them on a pedestal, or lagyan natin ng barricade ang kanilang mga territories. No, I think it's that by protecting their rights is one of those steps we need to do. that they are also people, regardless that they are considered indigenous peoples, they have also rights. And in the Constitution, it says that wherever you come from, for as long as you're in the Philippines and you are as a citizen, sovereign citizen of this country, you must have equal access to the resources of the Philippines, natural resources of the Philippines, access to law, access to definitely education too. And what's saddening about this situation is that they are reflections of the real Filipino culture, and yet they are poor, and there's a possibility that their culture will die within 10, 20 years from now. And that would be saddening because when a culture dies, everything with it, not just the people, the language, the identity, the products, and all the traditions will die with the culture. And we don't want that to happen. And as much as possible, we try to preserve them. Ito po yung sinasabi natin, like kagaya ng sa Ilocos, meron po din yung kultura sila na yung pottery, no? Paano kung hindi na natin preserve yung idea ng pottery kasi tinuturo natin sa mga bata sa education po natin is to be an educated and skilled to be an educated person is to be able to have this type of jobs. Pag ikaw ay magsasaka, pag ikaw ay tagagawa ng mga weaving na yan, hindi ka considered as successful. Yung ganun mga idea, stereotypes of what a successful person should be, makes our students feel uh, and see the traditions of their IP identities feel like they are inferior over the other types of of jobs and profession. All right. Also, nagkakaroon ng problema po sa aking connection. Okay, so just bear with me. Okay, there are 20 million estimated IPs in the Philippines. 20 million estimated IPs in the Philippines consisting of around 110 ethnic groups. They are one of the most vulnerable sectors of the Philippine society, suffering from abject poverty, malnutrition, exploitation, conflict and violence, discrimination, alienation of their natural resources and human rights violations, and severe lack of access to basic services. This is true. I was invited way back in 2016. I was invited to Boracay by the local government, and I was tasked to look into the IP, the indigenous people living, the original dwellers of Boracay. Totoo nangyari ha, the original dwellers of Boracay are now the marginalized, the marginalized people in Boracay. Ang mga tao na ngayon ang nagmamay-ari ngayon ng mga lands at saka ng industry sa Boracay ay yung mga banyaga, ay yung mga negosyante, mga Pilipino, basically the point there is that kung sino pa ang original dwellers ng Boracay, sila pa ang marginalized. And what's really saddening about this is that they were not given an opportunity to have access to education. So if they don't have access to education, how can we help them improve themselves? And it's not just the kind of education that we're going to provide them with, like any ordinary school. It's the kind of education, the kind of curriculum that would integrate their culture so that they continue on their traditions, their culture, thereby also learning other cultures, learning also other information, but making them still rooted in their own identities. That's really difficult to design. I have never designed that, but that was an invitation from me, from the locality of Boracay. But looking back now, I said no. While I was there, sakit sa damdamin naman. Ngayon ko na-realize ng I felt like during that time, I was still immature. I didn't have enough skills. I didn't have enough knowledge to actualize what they needed. So I referred someone else who was, could better address their needs. The point there is that the kind of education that we need to provide for people who iba kasi yung ini-integrate po natin yung IPs, the cultures of the IPs in our curriculum, in our regular curriculum. Iba naman po rin ang curriculum na ibibigay po natin sa mga estudyante sa IPs na nagaling from the IPs na para sa kanila lang po. So it's kind of like a hybrid of the kind of curriculum that, people or students are coming from the cities and all. Kind of difficult. In my perspective, has been designing curriculum for quite some time now. I cannot still picture of how a curriculum would look like. So I've been doing a lot of research, and after this topic has been provided for me, I was able to access a lot of researches and a lot of designs of curriculum that is really addressing the needs of the IPs. Probably right now I could, go back to Boracay. Kaya lang may pandemics. I could go back to Boracay, and say to the mayor and say, I can address now the problems of your IPs and I can do something about that right now. Kaya lang wala na pa akong chance. I don't know. We'll never know in the future. But, I feel now that we have to do something about it. Kasi nga, just imagine they are 20 million estimated. Okay? At sila ang nama-marginalize. Kasi minsan kung sila pa ang nakatira sa lugar na yon, sila pa ang walang titulo ng kanilang tinitirhan, sila pa ang walang rights. Kung sino pa ang pumasok, sila pa ang nagkaroon ng maraming rights kaysa sa mga yung matagal na dyan nakatira. We have to do something about that. And I hope that a lot of educators, well, I think educators can do something about, educating the students, but I think it's also, there should also be the role of the local government and the lawmakers in providing for our IT people. So what I can do here is to make you people out there realize that we have a role in helping our IT brothers and sisters out there by talking. Let's start talking about it. So my challenge for you is to start talking on your social media about if you have IPs in your localities, why not try to do something about it? By start making a change by starting a talk about it. Dialogue. Let's start with dialogues. All right? Trivia pa lang po yun. Ha? So let's have a self-assessment of just more of an awareness and awareness of our level of involvement on the cultural heritage and protection of indigenous communities in the Philippines. I got this instrument. It's just a set of questions that we need to ask ourselves to gauge whether we have been actively promoting and actively partaking in the protection of the IP or indigenous groups of the Philippines and protecting the needs of our students who are coming from the indigenous groups in the Philippines. So let's now, are we now ready to listen and ask yourselves the following question? I'm also asking my questions and these questions, and I will also answer these questions here and as honestly as possible. So you don't have to have the same question answers as mine. Anyway, so the first question is, do I actively participate and advocate the elimination of the deep-seated discrimination of most Filipinos against IPs in the country? Like color pa lang. Oo nga, mali. Ako din po noon eh. Meron akong yung... I'm so biased when I feel like nakita ako ng kulot ng buhok. Ako, ano ka pa? Meron ka pang igurot na na remnants up sa jeans mo. So, although it's a joke that I do, pero masakit din sa tao na naka-receive na, ano ngayon kung igurot ako, kung kulot ako, totoo naman akong Pilipino. Yung mga ganun ba na, and sometimes you are not sensitive that people think it's just a joke, but on the perception and the reception of the person that we talk to and use this type of language we use towards these people, it's also demeaning. Kahit joke sa atin, sa kanila seryoso yun. And I'm realizing that when looking at this is from actually from UNESCO, and these are just 4 basic questions. And while looking at the questions, and oh my goodness, I think I have violated all of these questions. So do I actively participate? Hindi nga ako nagpa-participate, pero kasama pa ako sa mga nagdi-demon, nagdi-discriminate. And I think also one of the many problems of the people, of Filipino people, is not just the discrimination of IP people, but also deeply rooted on the kind of language, that the differences of language, diversity of language, the one that I talked about yesterday, linguistic diversity. Like pag narinig po natin na mali ang pumatigas ang pronunciation ng isang Pilipino sa English o kaya Filipino, Bisaya agad. Hindi ba pwedeng na mispronounce lang? Yung mga ganun pa mga discrimination. And sometimes it's more of a joke for some people, for some Filipinos. They do that in TikTok too. They do that also on Facebook. I did that too on Facebook. I posted some and I went to Palawan. There are a lot of IPs in Palawan and I encountered some, and then I was so insensitive then, way back 2015. Alam ng VIBAL po yun. Very insensitive. But I think these questions that UNESCO is trying to provide us is more of a reflection. So I'm challenging you teachers out there na try nyo pong itong i-post sa inyong mga Facebook, sa inyong IG, sa social media nyo. Try answer the following questions to yourselves. Whether you have been protecting the rights and promoting the rights our IP brothers and sisters coming from the indigenous groups in the Philippines, or you have been part of ruining the lives of these people. I could say ruining the lives of these people. All right. Anyway, second question: do I help in securing this is a really really nice question. Okay, do I help in securing and providing basic necessities for their livelihood and rituals by buying their products? Dito po sa sinabi ko sa sarili ko, yes. At least there's a question that I could say, yes. Na ibig sabihin daw po yun, hindi naman kailangan natin na nabigyan natin sila ng mga relief goods, bigyan natin sila ng mga damit, or pamigyan natin yung mga pinaglakihan natin ng mga damit sa mga ITs. Hindi daw yun. It's also buying the products that yung mga tinitinda, maraming yung halimbawa lang po, pagpupunta ko nga sa napupunta ko si Locos, ang una kong hinahanap talaga ay yung mga bahag talaga, you know. I don't know, there's a word for that. Ayun na naman po, aking being sensitive for the culture. Nang pumunta ako sa mountain province, instead of going to restaurants or to mga high-end na mga kainan doon na pang foreigner, ang hinahanap ko yung mga local karinderya. Yun ang hanapan ko kasi yun talaga ang mga nagluluto ng mga dish ng locality. So, sabi ko, bakit ka pupunta ng isang lugar tapos ang kakainan mo rin pala Jollibee? So, what's the point of going there? Because we go to a place in the Philippines not to promote our own culture, but to be immersed with the culture of that community that we visit and partake of their culture. So, ayun mo lang kumain ka ng mga pagkain nila, nagluto ng mga pinikpikan ng tawag nila ata yun. And I saw, tapos I was invited kasi may kaibigan ako na, mind you, doktor na igorot from the mountain province. And then, invite ako ng family na pag mayroon daw silang mga relatives na coming from nagtatrabaho sa Baguio tapos umuwi ng mountain province, they have this celebration as a family. And then one of the dish that they prepare would be the pinikpikan. I'm not sure if it's the right word that I recall as pinikpikan, yung manok tapos bago nilutuin yung pinipikpik nila. And then in my perspective coming from from Manila, kasi mas marami na ako Manila perspective kasi nga lumaki halos doon na ako sa Manila, lumaki kasi 16 years old ba naman nasa Manila na hanggang ngayon. Anyway, I thought that, sabi ko, oh my goodness, this is torture of the chicken. Why couldn't you just, kill the chicken instead of, making the chicken suffer? Kasi nga, buhay pa yung manok, tas kinaganon. At that time, akala ko, I was using my own biases as a person coming from the outside of the culture. Tapos, hindi ko alam na ano pala yun, yung parang disrespectful for the elders. Kasi elders ang nagkakaroon ng ritual ng ganon. Tapos all the rest ng mga tao nakatingin. Tapos ako, I was there invited pa nga ako. Meron pa silang parang rice wine na pinapainom while watching. So I turned my back and went back to the house of my friend and went to the bedroom and I said, I can't stand the torture that you're doing to the chicken. Tapos na yung pinuntahan, after the ritual, sinabihan ako ng kaibigan ko na that was disrespectful. What you could have done is at least, stayed and kept quiet. If it was against your culture, at least this is for our culture by respecting it. I felt so bad. So pagdating na kasi dinner na kahapon na, pagdating ng dinner na, sorry, this is my story about, this is my personal experience on this topic, okay? Di ko naman kayo manghinga ng experience sa inyo kasi. So, during dinner na, there was this dish na parang dinuguan kasi blackish siya, parang dinuguan sa atin, Hindi ko alam na yun palang pinikpikan. And then when I tasted it, I was like, oh my goodness, this really tastes good. Ang sarap talaga. Tapos sabi niya, that's the chicken you thought was tortured. Natamimi talaga ako. Sabi ko sa sarili ko, yeah, in your face. These are things that, because we are not immersed with the other cultures, we don't immerse with this type of communities in the Philippines. We use our own personal cultures to judge them. At minsan kasi hindi rin nakalagay sa mga libro natin. Yun din po eh. I think we are not educated. We're not open-minded to the different IPs in the Philippines because kung meron bang nakalagay sa libro po natin sa Araling Panlipunan, ano lang siya, memorize lang naman. Hindi talaga pinaparamdam sa atin as part of, an eye-opener, be part of our perspective of how to understand and how to relate to other people. Ito po yung sa rituals po. Sorry po. I was with PNU then, and then Butuan, nag-ano kami ng, meron kaming, I think we had an excursion sa Palawan State University. And the local government, at the time I see Hagidorn pa noon na mayor, invited us to a hotel. I forgot the hotel. And may mga IPs na nagsayaw. So they were showcasing the indigenous tribes, indigenous people of Palawan and the dances. And then there was this situation. There was this instance that we are supposed to eat this dish. They call it as the part of the ritual. Merong yung uod ng ano ng kahoy na puti siya eh. Tapos buhay pa talaga siyang gumaganon-ganon. Tapos ididip mo siya sa suka tapos gaganon. Well, I think I did not disrespect the people there kasi nga I wanted to show my colleagues at TNU na hindi ako matatakutin. So ako yung unang-una. Sabi ko, oh, come on people, it's just easy. This is, ang uod na to is coming from nature. So that means it's high in protein. So ganun ko siya, tapos kinain ko. The point there is that I made fun of it. Again kasi limited idea. And then I think this is one of the many problems with why we are not able to fully grasp the idea of how we should be able to protect and propagate the traditions of the IPs, of the indigenous peoples, and come up with a really good needs-based program for them. It's because we just believe that they exist. And by knowing them, it's like also helping them. I think it's not bad. By knowing them, we get to be actively and open-minded and respectful of who they are and where they come from. And we find ways, parang, okay, baka naman dyan video, I've been using your taglines. They could probably find ways how we can help them. And one of that in this question is by buying their products. Third question is, do I actively support in promoting and enriching the cultures and traditions of the indigenous people without necessarily exploiting them? Yung ano po ba, yung ilalagay ba natin, meron ako nakita sa IG na nagpo-post ng mga pictures na sila ay nagpa-pictures ng mga matatandang binggit, igorot sa binggit. I don't know, like, for them it's more of tourism and all, pero para sa akin is one way or the other, I think the people, the tourists are exploiting the poverty of this igorot. Kaya nga ang mga igorot nandun sila kasi nga babayaran sila kasi wala naman silang pera. I think we're exploiting not necessarily the culture, we're exploiting their being poor. Dahil nga puro sila, they are willing to take a picture. Pero kung sa reality, parang then di nila alam, di post po sila sa mga Facebook natin. I think that's against our data privacy law. We should ask their permission if it's okay. We can napapicture tayo, pero can we upload that because the public will see the pictures? Diba? Yung mga ganun ba? Parang, yeah, we're helping them. We're giving them money so that we can take pictures with them and in their traditional wear. But the question is, are we also exploiting them in the process? Just say it. All right? These are not my questions, okay? These are the questions coming from the United Nations on how there are a lot of questions, but there are the three questions that stood out when I was reading the manifesto. So please post this questions in your Facebook about the IPs have and ask your friends, make this public and make them realize. Let's start talking about this topic. All right. So a good thing would be products like, do you have these products at home that you have bought? Kagaya ng ito po ay weaving from Ilocos, from the Benguet. Ito, almost dying because wala na nakapasok on na mga tao. Wala na pong mga anak na gustong mag-carry on with the tradition. At ito mga weaving po ng mga baskets. All right? So I hope that one way or the other is not necessarily exploiting their poverty. Yung sinasabi natin nagdo-donate tayo. Okay, nagdo-donate tayo. But I think by supporting their small livelihood, yung mga products nito, I think we are helping them better than, donations and all. Alright, yung pottery sa Ilocos, okay. Tapos yung carving po na traditions ng Paete sa Laguna. I've been meaning to go to Paete. I've been reading a lot about the products in Paete. Probably after the pandemic, I'll visit it and look at the traditions there. I'm not saying they're IPs. It's just that, also traditions in the Philippines too. Anyway, So let's now proceed to discussion on trying to understand why we need to protect our students. Students are coming from the indigenous groups in the Philippines. Well, not just protecting them, but also protecting their culture in our class. Even if our class does not have students who are coming from indigenous group, it is also necessary that we educate our students about the existence of these people, because just because we don't talk about them doesn't mean that they do not exist. And there's a high possibility that our students may encounter this people. So what I'm trying to say here is that I think what the Philippine Professional Standard for Teachers trying to tell us is that as teachers, we're not just going to take care of the students who are coming from the indigenous groups in the Philippines, but also educating our students about the IPs in the Philippines. So these are the questions we're going to answer. And magdi-discussion pa lang po ako, tas ano na po, 343. Anyway, konting madali lang po talaga. Who are the indigenous peoples in the Philippines? And then what is the traditional knowledge, intellectual property, and cultural heritage? And then why do we need to carefully consider the education of learners from indigenous groups? And then the last question is, what is the role of education in conserving the culture of indigenous peoples in the Philippines? Let's start with question number one. Who are the indigenous peoples in the Philippines? Sila po ano, yan po sila. But they're just one of those, okay? One of those IPs in the Philippines. All right. I got this from a research. Yun po, mga research na gumagawa sa Pilipinas ay mga Vietnamese, mga Australian, New Zealanders, tapos sa mga Pilipino, walang pakailang sarili mga IPs. All right. The Philippines is a culturally diverse country with an estimated 14 to 17 million indigenous peoples or IPs belonging to 110 ethno-linguistic groups. Okay, we need to realize. Why we need to support the MTB-MLE. The MTB-MLE is not just to promote literacy, but secondary aim is to help our IPs and the people coming from the different ethno-linguistic groups preserve the language. And by preserving the language, we also help them preserve their culture, because we cannot separate language with the culture. They are intertwined. Okay, so I hope people out there would realize why the Department of Education is promoting the MTD-MLE. Not necessarily, well, primarily it is for our students to acquire easily literacy, but it's also because of the contextualization perspective of the MTB-MLE and teaching in contextualizing lessons, contextualizing examples, concepts, vocabulary, is to help our students be literate in the language they're growing up with, hence also preserving the culture embedded in the language. Sana po, kasi marami pa akong narinig ng mga teachers na against MTB-MLE. So with this po, I hope you understand why the MTB-MLE is also a good program in helping protect and preserve the culture and the language of the different IPs in the Philippines. All right. Next. All right. Also, the Philippines has a total land area of 30 million hectares. Half of the country is hilly and mostly categorized as a forest zone and part of the public domain. As of the year 2005, the country has a population of 85 million. There are 112 ethno-linguistic groups in the country who comprise nearly 15% of the total population of the country. And I just researched an hour ago that at the moment we have 110,074,631 and counting total population as of today. And if you get 15% of that, we have 16,511,195 total population of coming from the indigenous peoples in the Philippines. See, that's 16 million. Ang dami po nila na dapat nating respetuhin. Okay, kilalanin at tulungan na magkaroon ng pride sa kanilang personal identity. Remember that the personal identity helps in the development of self-concept. And the development of self-concept of our students also help them in developing their social-emotional development, and thereby also facilitate a higher motivation, self-motivation to learning. So kung ganun po ang itutulong natin by understanding them, we are also helping our students become better learners too. Next, the IPs represent the original cultures in the Philippines who have remained untouched by colonization. Yung mga traditions po nila, ito yung mga traditions na hindi napasukan ng mga Amerikano, tradisyon ng mga Amerikano, kultura ng Amerikano, kultura ng mga Hapon, kultura ng mga Espanyol. Talagang ito ang mga totoong Pilipinong kultura. So by learning, sana nga talagang I think ang aralin-tali po ng curriculum po natin dapat paigtingin. Pero I think also it should be also the responsibility of other subject areas like the languages to incorporate all of this information via using this as literature, as pieces for our students to read and learn about. And they're learning literacy and they're learning language, but they're also learning and understanding the different cultures in the Philippines. By that, I think that would be a good program to protect and promote the indigenous peoples and different indigenous groups in the Philippines. Second question is, what is traditional knowledge and intellectual property and cultural heritage? Okay, so here it is. Traditional knowledge can be understood as a living body of knowledge that is developed. Bakit po siya tinawag na living body? Dahil siya po ay dala po ng mga tao. Paniniwala po yan ng mga tao. Ang kultura at ang traditional knowledge ay way of life ng mga tao ng kultura na yon. So kaya tinawag siyang living body. Sorry po, may mga tutok ako dito. So pasensya po talaga. Alright. So we have to see that this culture is, the knowledge embedded in the culture is living because the ones continuing on this culture are actual people. All right, sustained and passed on from generation to generation within a community, often forming part of its cultural and spiritual identity. Yan siguro po dapat nating ibalik sa ating kultura. Yung pagkilala sa Pilipinas. Parang nawala po yata sa ating kultura, sa ating curriculum po yun. I'm not sure, but I've been looking at our curriculum, and I think we have to really investigate and carefully look at it, whether we really promote and protect the different IPs in the Philippines, and to make our students, more understanding of our, fellow Filipino citizens. Nawawala talaga sa isip ko pag nakakarinig ako ng ingay sa labas at kaya mga aso. All right. So traditional knowledge consists of course, number one, unique knowledge of the world. Okay, how they see their belief system, how a marriage should be, what are those rituals that they have. So these are things that we uniquely Filipino. Kagaya pa nito mga pagkakasal po na mayroon pang mga bigas na itatanatapon. For some people, it's parang nonsensical po. Pero I think this is the one way of looking at our personal identity. It's very saddening kung later on malalaman natin na binabasa na lang natin, ay, once upon a time in the Philippines, di ba parang parang kasama tayo sa populasyon, kasama tayo sa henerasyon na pumatay sa mga tradisyon na ito. Should we accept that we are part of the population, part of the generation who gradually, little by little, killed the different IPs and different traditions that are actually Filipino traditions represented by the IPs? Something to ponder about. Next is the know-how skills. Yung weaving na po yan, okay? Nawawala na din po yan. Tapos yung cooking, yung the way we cook, dahan-dahan nang nawawala dahil we are progressing and we're becoming more of a highly convenient type of society. You're looking at the convenience po. Yung lahat na lang po ng ating, pati pag-prepare ng pagkain, paglilinis, yung mga simple po na know-how skills ay puro na lang ay malls, nabibili, puro instant. Puro instant na lang po. Instant. Pasensya po kayo, medyo maingay po talaga yung mga tuta namin, okay? So, later on, next time, I'll close the door. Another one is on innovations and practices. These are things that we have, like yung Banawi rice terraces. Nakakatawa ako kasi may mga libro, ang nakabasa ko sa mga libro ay banana rice terraces. Sabi ko, okay. So I think that's something that we don't want our kids to know. That's a wrong concept, a conceptual error. So Banahaw pala yung dahon. Banawi rice terraces is an innovation and practice that is considered in the world as one of the best traditional practices and innovation on planting rice. Okay? Kung paano yung layer na, it does not destroy the mountain per se, but the indigenous group did is to conform the topography on 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 how they can still continue on planting rice for survival purposes. Those are innovations, and we need to preserve those too. And not to mention, it's also a tourist attraction. But for us, kasi na outside the culture, ang tingin natin po, ay, very nice pang tourist attraction. Pero sa mga tao nakatira dyan, hindi yan tourist attraction. It's their way of life. So I think one thing that we should, how we promote it, we don't promote it as tourist attraction. We promote it as we need to see this as an innovation and a unique practice of that particular culture. Okay? So pasensya po ulit, mainit yung mga puta namin. Now, also in the Philippine Constitution, it's also stated there that we should protect the rights of our IP people, our brothers and sisters coming from the indigenous groups. The Philippine Constitution, in recognition of this diversity and under the framework of national unity and development, mandates state recognition. Ulitin ko po, state recognition, protection, promotion, and fulfillment of the rights of indigenous people. Eh, bakit yung report ni po yung former ano po natin sa yung nag-expose to mining po si Lopez ba yun? Si Gina Lopez ba yun? Nag-expose, and what she also exposed there is that some of the indigenous people's population there and the mining locations have also been dislocated. Nawalan po ng mga tirahan, nawalan po ng mga bahay. So it's so saddening because they are really, really marginalized and their rights are not protected. And yet it's stated in our Constitution. Pero ang pumirma na mga yung approval para mag-mining po ito ay mga local government, national government. So nasa Constitution but poprotektahan daw pero hindi naman pinoprotektahan. Probably just protecting their own rights. Also, there's a law that the Philippines enacted way back in 1997, also known as the IPRA. It's also the foundation for the creation of the IP program in the Department of Education and all other programs that the Philippines have been doing. But it says here in the Republic Act 8371, also known as the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act, recognized the rights of IPs to manage their ancestral domains. It has become the cornerstones of the current national policy on IPs. Part of this law as well, or this Republic Act, is also the creation of educational systems for the IPs, scholarships for them, for the students, and some livelihood support for them, and also easy access to education, like that the local government should put up schools in the locality so that the kids of this the kids from this population will have equal access to education. All right. So we now go to question number 3. Why do we need to carefully consider the education of various indigenous groups? Okay, this is what we should consider. There are approximately 476 million indigenous peoples worldwide in over 90 countries, although they make up over 6% of the global population. Kanina pinakita ko po sa Philippine population, 50%. They account for about 15% of the extreme poor. So it's 15% sa Pilipinas, 40 to 15%. Tapos sa global po, 15% pa rin sila na pinaka-poor. And our father founder at the Sisters of Mary told us that for us, one of the solutions to cut and stop the cycle of poverty is via quality education. So if education is one of the solutions to stop the cycle of poverty, then I think Department of Education and our government should look into strengthening the Department of Education's thrust in providing education to the IPs. Alas, kulang po tayo ng funding on those. Kulang tayo ng training. Di po ako naka-attend pa ng training on how we can address the needs of the IPs. Kulang po tayo ang mga research ng mga linguists ng mga sa Commission ng Wikang Filipino, hindi po nami-made public para ang lahat ng tao nakakaintindi ng mga resulta at ng mga impormasyon na dapat natin alam para mas intindihin po natin at mas respetuhin po natin ang mga pangangailangan ng mga ating mga kapatid na mga nanggagaling sa mga IPs. Pero kasi nakakaalam lang po ay kaunti lang na tao. Alright? So also, indigenous people's life expectancy is up to 20 years, lower than the life expectancy of non-indigenous people worldwide. They will definitely, the culture will definitely die. At ang sabi na dito, it's 20 years. David Crystal also said that every day, one culture dies. One part of a part of this world, one culture will die. Isipin mo yun, ha? May namamatay araw-araw na kultura dahil hindi natin tinutulungan. Kasi pag may namatay na miyembro, yun po sinasabi, yun ang turo sa amin sa lexicography. Because I took lexicography with Dr. Yun kaya napunta ko sa Karamoan. My informants were actually the elders in the Karamoan, and in the different islands. Because sila po ang kailangan natin ang interviewin informants kasi sila po ang meron. Yung knowledge, kaya nga sila living knowledge because yung utak ng kultura ay nasa kanila, nasa elders. Kaya kailangan natin silang kausapin, tapos i-transcribe po natin ang mga alam nila, ay mga ginagawa ng unang panahon so that it will be preserved and then we do something about in our educational system to incorporate that in the contextualization of our curriculum in the, say, division level perhaps, or school level perhaps, or district level perhaps, so that we incorporate this IP culture in our curriculum. Nangyari kasi contextualization natin, industry, family, pero hindi natin na-consider din po. Ako personally, when I did some workshops in contextualization, hindi ko rin po na pumapasok sa utak ko. Baka meron tayong IP culture here in Cavite or in Batangas. Mga ganun po. Hindi pumasok sa aking utak. Ngayon na I'm being refreshed, I will definitely keep that in mind. All right. Also, a vast majority of the 12 million population of indigenous peoples in the Philippines reside in the uplands where they claim as part of their traditional territories. Most of the remaining natural resources of the country are found within the traditional lands of the indigenous peoples. Alam mo mga natitirang mga virgin forests, untouched forests, yung mga dagat, mga kayaman, mga natural resources ng Philippines po ay tinitirhan po most of our IPs. Okay? So by preserving this and promoting the rights of the IPs in the Philippines and by educating all the people in the Philippines to also protect their rights is also preserving our nature. Magkadiktong yan kasi lugar, hindi pwede naman ang tao na may kultura na walang lugar. So according to this research by United Nations, sa Pilipinas po, most of our untouched virgin forests, ang ating mga preserved natural resources are still dwelled on or residences of our minority indigenous peoples. So therefore, we have to protect them. And by protecting them, we indirectly protect also the environment where they live. Over the last 20 years, the rights of so ito po yung mga nangyayari na po sa buong mundo. So in 1991, 23 ratifications of Indigenous and Tribal Peoples Convention. Nag-usapan na po yan since 1991. United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples in 2007. The American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples in 2016. Sa namin nilang indigenous, mga Indians po. Next po, the establishment of the United Nations Permanent Forum on the Indigenous Issue. Ito po sa United Nations, ito ko kinuha mga informasyon po na ito ng mga facts. So the ones that I provided you with are all facts. Ito pa yung very, very saddening is that not only few people in the Philippines would do research on really investigating and understanding the IPs in the Philippines. Ito naman mga United Nations, Americans po ang gumagawa para sa atin. Alright? Next, the expert mechanism of the rights of indigenous peoples, and then the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, UNSRR. Here's what I would like to ask. Despite all of this fora, these laws have been instilled, have been placed in all platforms of the law, United Nations, local, national, constitution, republic law has been trained to the DSWD to consider all of this resources. It remains on the question that despite all of these laws and public recognition, have we educated, not education, sorry, have we educated, wait, I hate that, mali yan. Okay, it should be educated. Have we educated, have we educated the rest of the world to recognize, respect, and promote our happy brothers and sisters? I think one thing is to have laws. One thing is to have provisions on protecting and promoting the rights of IPs. But, promoting it and educating all the people about this is something else. Doon tayo magaling eh. Magaling tayo gumawa ng mga laws, gumawa ng mga programa, pero kulang ang training and education sa mga tao. Kaya marami pa rin po mga tao, marami pa mga Pilipino pa rin ay hindi pa rin po open-minded or well-informed about the different IPs in the Philippines. Kagaya ng mga badyaw, ang tingin ng mga tao, ng mga ang mga badyaw ay mga how do you call this, ito yung mga tao, mga tamad at namamalimos. Yan po narinig ko palagi sa mga tao na may mga badyaw kasi dito sa Cavite, tapos nung napunta ako sa Leyte, doon sa Southern Leyte, may mga badyaw na na-dislocate po. Ang tag ng mga tao doon sa mga badyaw ay ito yung mga tao na tamad kasi palaging namamalimos lang. Well, I think it's because mali po ang education natin sa mga tao na ang tingin natin sa kanila. We stereotype them. But if you provide them with proper education, ito mga badyaw natin, proper education, help them, provide them with livelihood, hindi niya mamamalimos. Kasi they all have personal pride. And they need to take care of their families too. Meron na tayong marami ng mga successful na mga badyaw. Alright? Hindi lang kulang ng talagang informasyon sa publiko. Also, this is one thing that we need to take care of. Also, this is being encouraged for us to think about and consider why we need to consider that as part of our education system. It's because when a culture dies, we lose a unique culture and perception of the world. Mawawalan po tayo ng isang kultura na iba ang tingin sa mundo at paano sila namumuhay. Pangalawa, we lose the memory of different histories. May history po sila. Baka may mga alam sila ng mga nangyari noong unang panahon na hindi natin nalagay sa ating mga history books. Well, by talking with them, we get to know more. We lose local resources. Kasi nga, sabi po natin kanina, kung saan sila nakatira, nandun po yung mga untouched po na mga preserved ng mga natural resources. Pag nawala po sila, wala na mapoprotekta doon. At baka kami na po yun ng mga kapitalista ng Pilipinas. And of course, being in the lexicography, people lose their language. It's so saddening that, when people learn other languages, they eventually forget the language. And by doing that, when they forget the language, part of that would be the culture too. So hindi po natin pwedeng paghiwalay ng kultura at wika. So we have to preserve both. By preserving the language, we preserve the culture as well. So supportan po natin ang MPD Emily, please, people. Final question is, what is the role of education in conserving the culture of Indigenous peoples in the Philippines? I'm just going to share with you 4 ways how we can conserve the culture of Indigenous people. All right. Number 1, it should be talked about in books. It should be talked about in radios. It should be on television. It should be on Facebook, on YouTube. So people right now who's tuning in and watching me, I know that you have a lot of responsibilities in making your modules and all, but I'm encouraging you to start talking about the rights of the IPs. What have we done? So, simulan po natin, pag-usapan naman natin yan, kasi yung mga pag-usapan po natin ng mga OOTP, pag-usapan natin, let's be a catalyst of the change of perspective of other people towards the IPs in the Philippines. And I'm going to actively promote this starting today because, what happened with this topic is made me realize that I have not actively been promoting and protecting the rights of our brothers and sisters, Filipinos, coming from the IP groups. How do we do that? Just basically 4. 1, this is the 4 things that we can do that I'm encouraging you people to do, which I will do too. Protection of indigenous culture, traditions, and institutions. All right. ito po yung sinasabi natin na, do we talk about this, about protecting indigenous cultures and traditions and institutions? Like, pinag-usapan ba natin yung paano ang kanilang pagkakasal, paano ang kanilang yung sinasabi ko, pinag-usapan ba natin paano sila magluto, paano yung mga tradition ng Christmas nila, o may Christmas ba sila nun, mga fiesta nila. So, these are things that we need to talk about. Oo. Namimiss ko tuloy. One thing na pag pupunta ako sa isang lugar, ang una kong pinupuntahan palengke. I don't know why, pero sa palengke kasi makikita mo yung kultura ng locality. And there, that's what you get to see the culture, traditions sa pagkain nila and all. Okay? Next would be educational systems. I think we need to promote more, provide our IP brothers and sisters with scholarships for them. Sana po may mga schools dyan, yung may mga private schools po dyan. At since meron po pong online classes po, siguro kasama po natin, include po natin yung IP sa ating mga lessons. Yan po ang challenge ko po sa ating mga teachers out there. Educational system. Ipasok po natin ang pag-educate sa sinasabi po natin na 120 million indigenous peoples. Alright? Next is recognition of the cultural diversity. Sinasama ba natin sila sa ating mga kanilang mga traditions sa ating celebrations, like kung tayo may buwan ng wika, meron ba tayong mga celebrations pag meron tayong mga school activities and programs, sinasama ba natin mga dances, dances and cultures, music and tradition. Baka naman ito ay nasa MAPI lang, pero hindi natin sinasama sa part ko na dapat pag tayo ay nagprograma, ang ating papakita ay yung, yes, kasama mga hip-hop dances and all the new dances we have right now, but ipasok natin din ang ating mga Philippine dances, cultural dances. That would be good. Next would be the fourth one and last one that I would like to suggest is also community intellectual rights. Talking about this, what are the intellectual rights of the people na sana pag sinabi natin, pag mag-post po tayo, sinasabi natin na we ask permission, intellectual rights. We ask permission from the people na ipopost po namin to sa Facebook po ha, tapos we are going to promote. Sana pag post mo ng picture, educate din po tayo. These are the ignorant members of our locality. They are displaced. Hope we can help them by promoting ideas. Hindi lang po sana ng picture, but make it an advocacy. This is what I want us to do. Community intellectual rights. That we ask permission when we buy something, let's take a picture, post it on Facebook, but educate our people by looking at the picture. Hindi lang yung napapakita tayo na nakabili tayo ng mga bagay na yan, but hindi pinopromote natin and promote natin ang kanilang kultura, and at the same time educate other people about the IBs in the Philippines. That's about the things I would like to share. I'd like to talk about a lot of my experiences in dealing with having intimate contact with some of the IPs. Not all of them though, but only a few of those IPs in the Philippines. Sa upper part po, sa Benguet, sa Kalinga. Ay, pag hindi ko pa napupuntahan talaga Batanes. Nakapunta na pa ako ng Sulu, Tawi-Tawi. Sa Batanes na lang po ang hindi ko napupuntahan. So, hopefully after pandemic, I will have a chance to go to Batanes. This is where I end my talk. So, if you want to know more, this is more of making you be inspired to read more and know more about diversity of learners. And on one of the aspects of diversity of learners is on students' possibility coming from the indigenous groups in the Philippines. And it's not just our students coming from the indigenous group in the Philippines, but also protecting their rights, promoting their protection, and educating our other students and people about the IPs in the Philippines. Well, not just the Philippines perhaps, but all over the world, I suppose. Let's make it more global and not just local. Now this is time I entertain questions.
Thank you very much, brother. Now we will proceed to the question and answer portion. Our first question is from Celsius Watchon. Hi, sir. I have a question. How about the museums? Do you think museums contribute to learning by otherizing or our indigenous groups or by integrating them to the so-called mainstream discourse?
Well, the museum's responsibility is actually to preserve and to record the cultures in the Philippines and from the past, present, and for the use of the future. So wala po tayong sinasabi na sila po ay meron po silang malice in doing that or they are exploiting the different cultures and traditions po by, showcasing it in the museums. I think it's how we promote what's in the museum. Pero thank you very much for including that as your question because dapat po nga naman, yun po, dapat po kasama po sa education po natin yung pumupunta sa museums kasi wala namang chance sa mga estudyante po natin na pumunta ng mga localities ng ating mga IPs, yung unang mga panahon. May marami na po namatay ng mga IPs. By doing that, we educate. Again, hindi po, wala po dapat meaning po ang sabi na, ay pinopromote natin ang mga ang mga to tapos may in a way parang pinagkakitaan ang kanilang kultura. Hindi po sana to dapat ang ating perspektibo ng paggamit at pagkakaroon ng field trip sa museum. This is also to educate our students to open their minds about this, and how we are going to open their minds is how we talk about it. Okay, how we say it to them. So mas maganda para sa akin kasi mas maganda ang mga curators ng museum because they've been trained to factually talk about these things, not giving color, not giving political color or economic color to the presentations and the cultures that are being showcased in the museum. Now, I think you're going to ask me like, how are you going to do that now that we have pandemic that they're doing? There are a lot of virtual museums that are being conducted right now. I think the National Museum is now on the process of doing finishing their virtual museum visits. So I think kung matapos na po yun, i-ano po nila yun, ipopost po nila sa website. So please do visit the websites of the museums in the Philippines. There are a lot of museums in the Philippines. Meron po sa Cebu, meron po sa Visayas. Sa Iloilo, I think there's also Iloilo. In Manila alone, marami po mga museums. So I think they are now moving towards doing virtual museums. So yes, sir, they are also doing their part in promoting and preserving the cultures, not just the indigenous cultures in the Philippines, but also the history of the Philippines. Thank you very much for that question as well.
Thank you very much, sir. Our next question is from Ernesto San Jose. What teaching strategies are inclusive of learners from indigenous group?
That's two-tiered questions. What are the strategies? The strategies actually does not change. Kahit anong klaseng estudyante meron tayo, galing ba yan sa IT, hindi po magbabago. Strategies are uniquely cognitive in nature. They are to promote mental development, mental skills development. So kahit pa yung mga bata galing po sa kultura, halimbawa, naggamamit ka ng KWL Plus, graphic organizers as a strategy, or you do strategy like jigsaw puzzle, hindi po dapat mabago po yun. What you're going to ask me perhaps should be the content of the strategies. What I'm going to suggest is as well, like, kung sila po ay nag-KWL, I think the materials you're going to use for the strategy should incorporate information about the IPs. Again, yun po siguro ang one of the most common questions they ask me, sir, are there specific strategies, approaches for the IP people or to integrate IP knowledge and information to our students? Wala po. All strategies are uniquely towards mental and skills development and does not lean towards a particular population or lean towards type of a culture. They don't choose any. They can be used for as long as there are people and you're human beings. Those strategies can be used. What should be done is that teachers should carefully consider including some information like reading selections, documentary. Ang dami na po nagawa ng mga documentary sa Pilipinas about these IPs na pwede natin ipapanood sa mga bata with the use of those strategies. So ang laman po, ang content po dapat natin, ang pagpasok po natin ng pag-integrate ng ating ideas about promoting and preserving the IPs in the Philippines. Kasi parang nagma-marginalize po tayo ng sabi natin, itong strategies na to para to sa mga badyaw. O itong mga IT, itong klase ng strategy ito ay para sa mga para lang sa mga sa mga igorot. Wala pong ganon. Wala pong ginawa ang Diyos na yung klase ng utak meron ang mga igorot ay ibang klase ng utak para sa iba. Again, the brain is universal. Its functions are universal. So strategies are geared towards mental capacity and mental development, mental skills development. Then it does not choose any population or any IP group or any population at all, any cultural group in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, brother. That's all the questions we have for now. Any last reminders to our viewers for today po?
Definitely. These are just, some conclusions and challenges for us to think about. So this is it. One is that traditional knowledge is at the, sorry, I cannot read it, is at the core of indigenous identity, traditional knowledge. Okay, culture, language, heritage, livelihoods, and its transmission from one generation to the next must be protected and preserved and encouraged. So ito po yung sinasabi po natin na sana po ang mga teachers have been trained uh, to integrate information, traditional knowledge po, i-integrate po natin sa ating mga lessons, yung content po. So pwede po siguro natin ilagay yan sa, hindi lang, kasi nangyari po sa atin ay ang tingin natin na pag IPs or mga traditional knowledge po ay pang-araling panlipunan. Pwede naman po yan din sa science. Pwede rin po natin integrate yan sa ESP, sa Filipino, sa English. Well, sa mother tongue, talagang kailangan nandun siya. So I think, ang kailangan lang siguro is training for teachers, how it's done, how to reach for this information. Yun ang sinasabi ko po sa atin ngayon. These are all laws. But the information, the research, this traditional knowledge is somehow not made available to the public. Hindi ko alam kung bakit. Habang naghahanap kasi ako ng mga specific information researches, nakikita ko lang puro abstract. Hindi ako maka-access sa the complete manifesto of a particular indigenous group. Kasi marami pong mga research ang bawat indigenous group. Like, meron akong na-research pa about the indigenous groups in Palawan. So, meron akong summary ng lahat ng indigenous group of Palawan, pero hindi ko ma-access yung bawat specific cultures and traditional knowledge of the different identified IPs in Palawan. Kasi siguro kailangan magbayad and all, pero ang aking sanang ang mangyari po sana is kung ito po ay ginawa ng gobyerno, studied by United Nations. Pero kasi yung mga, that's what I'm asking now. Bakit yung mga research na ginawa ng United Nations, ng New Zealand, ng Singapore, ng Vietnam to the Philippines on IPs are made available, as in na-download ko po ay kumpletong manifesto, pero yung mga nagawa sa Pilipinas, bakit hindi made available? Just a question. Also, the permanent forum chair and Norgam, siya po yung permanent forum chair na binuo ng United Nations to protect the rights and promote the rights of the IPs, not just in the Philippines but the whole world. She said that we need to ensure that our educational practices, okay, languages, environmental conservation, and management is acknowledged and respected globally, and not only by the governments but all peoples. Yun pang nangyayari kasi. The concern of the United Nations is that yung IT is more of just for policymakers, for people, information for policymakers. So puro lang para sa policy. Kaya lang po, sino po ang tumatanggap ng mga pag-implement ng polisiya? Di ba yung mga tao? So dapat ang tao ang dapat nakakaalam kung ano ang laman ng mga polisiya na po ito. Ano po dapat ang ginagawa ng lipunan para tulungan ang mga tao na to? Ano po ang ginagawa ng mga tao na nasa edukasyon para matulungan ang mga tao na ito? Ako nga po sabi ko nga wala akong masyadong information on how to design a curriculum or educational system for the people like them. Why? Kulang ako ng training on that. Mahirap ako mag-claim. Kaya sabi ko nung in-invite ako sa Boracay noon, I was there for 3 days. I have to be honest na hindi ko talaga kaya because lacking ako ng knowledge on that. So this is also one of the things na tama po ka mga tanong nyo, paano nga naman namin sa mapopromote, wala kaming access to those information. That's also one. Hindi naman namin pwedeng sabihin na let's respect them. Kaya nga tama po, how can we respect people if we don't understand them? Pwede no, let's respect lang, idea of respect. But our respect for these people, for the IP people, becomes deeper if we try to understand them from where they come from and who they are. All right. Finally, I would like to leave you with the statement from the Genesis. In the Bible, it says, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male, female, he created them. Ibig sabihin po, despite where these people come from, whether they are indigenous peoples, whether they are Caucasians, whether they are rich people, whether they are millennials, whether they are urban people or rural people, or they come in from the poorest of the poor, they are so free. They should have equal rights, not because they are people, but because they are all creation of God. There are no such thing as lesser children of God. So as educators, I think it's also one way right now for us to start talking about this. So let's start a forum. Let us start by just promoting the idea of IPs in our Facebook and our IG. Dagdag lang po natin, hindi ko na sinasabi na tanggalin po ninyo yung mga OOTD ninyo, yung mga gusto nyo i-post po sa TikTok. But why not also promote protection and preservation of our Philippine IPs? With that, thank you very much, and I hope this is more of an eye opener for us, for me as well, a lot for me. This is more of a realization for me that there's one aspect of education, especially for creating educational systems and curricular designs to integrate um, IP information, something that I need to improve on with myself. Thank you very much. So I hope to see you next week on our PPST Domain 4.
There we have it. In behalf of VIBAL Group Incorporated, I would like to thank our speaker for today for this very eye-opening and insightful learning session. It is an honor to have you with us today, brother, and to all our VIBAL viewers, all thanks to you for your continuous patronage to our daily learning session. Don't forget to register to get your e-certificate of participation. We also encourage you to subscribe and watch on our official Vival Facebook and YouTube channel. Muli, maraming salamat at magandang araw sa ating lahat.